On the Corner is a book about African American intellectual life. It takes us back to this moment in the mid-1960s when the huge wave of riots or rebellions that broke out in many black urban neighborhoods really recast the image of Black America in the minds of many white Americans, because it belatedly confronted them with the fact that for the first time the majority of African American people were living in northern urban areas rather than in the South. And at this moment, the gatekeepers of America's cultural institutions and media, so people like editors and publishers, theatre producers, gallery curators, really looked towards African American intellectuals to explain why it was that this huge wave of violence was erupting in black urban neighborhoods across the north of the country. And so that really establishes what I argue has been the predominant role of black intellectuals in American public life ever since that time, which is to act as what I call indigenous interpreters of black urban life to white America. And I focus a lot of this book on three particular African American intellectuals whose careers were really transformed by this moment of heightened public attention to black urban life. So firstly, the social psychologist Kenneth B. then the poet and playwright and Black Power activist Amiri Baraka, and thirdly, Romare Bearden, a very important visual artist who at this moment in the mid-1960s begins to produce a stunning series of collages depicting African American life. And really for each of these three figures, it was at this moment in the mid-1960s that they really burst into public attention because of this renewed interest in African American urban life. And so they were identified as being indigenous interpreters. So in other words, as people whose first-hand personal experiential knowledge of black life was also matched by their status as intellectuals, by their accreditation as artists or as social scientists or as social and political commentators. One of the things I try to do in the book is to reconstruct the very heated debates that existed among some black intellectuals about how black urban life should be represented and portrayed. And I also try to show that they felt a very powerful sense of responsibility to try to use their status and their profile in the media to try to reshape the terms of America's debate about race. But probably the most important argument that I make in the book is that for all of the attention and exposure that these figures received in their new role as indigenous interpreters, each of them very quickly came to feel that this role placed real restrictions and limitations on them. And so from there, I argue that their experience has really been echoed by subsequent generations of African American intellectuals right up to the present, in that for the most part, the only role in which the American media and public sphere has admitted them as intellectuals has been in this role of indigenous interpreter of African American life. And so sadly, the same kind of logic of racial authenticity that establishes this role of indigenous interpreter serves to marginalize the opinions of African American intellectuals on subjects other than race and African American life. So what I've tried to do in On the Corner is to offer some ways to think about the very important role that black intellectuals have played in helping to shape ideas about race in America. But I've also tried to pay attention to the ways in which race itself has shaped and affected the nature of African American intellectual life.